People who started a new life elsewhere. Why did you do it? Sort of. My cousin went for a walk once. He was dating this woman, who just an awful human being. She got pregnant, swore it was his, and once the kid was born the state went after him for child support, as he wasn't on the birth certificate, even though they were living together. Anyways, the paternity test came back showing it wasn't his, and she flipped her lid. Just lost it. He asked her to calm down and said he wanted to take a walk to cool off. He left everything he owned, minus the clothes on his back and his wallet, and went for a walk that he never came from. A few years back, the kid found him. He was 16 or 17 and went on some giant rant about him being a bum and a punk ass and whatever other nonsense. My cousin told him he wasn't his dad. The paternity test showed that, and he had no idea why she told him he was the father and abandoned them. Kid left a whole hell of a lot more confused than he showed up, I think. Edit calm, not qualm.
That's a rough situation. Your cousin seemed to have it tough with that woman and the unexpected fallout. It's wild how drama can follow people, especially with family matters like that. It must have been hard for both him and the kid when they finally met. Not having answers can mess with someone's head. I guess he just wanted to escape all the chaos and find some peace.
I was living with a very mean and controlling girlfriend. If it wasn't her way or all about her, she threw a fit. One day I had enough and said I was going to the store and just kept driving. I literally drove for 12 hours and showed up at a friend's house 5 states away and asked if I could crash on his couch. I called my boss and said I wanted to quit work. He was pretty cool about it. He knew my girlfriend and actually set me up with a job in my new city. I have never spoken to my ex since. Soon after my relocation, I met my now wife, and I could not be in a better relationship. Best thing I ever did.
Sounds like you made a big move for yourself. Getting away from a controlling situation can be tough, but it seems like it really worked out for you. Your friend's couch probably felt like a safe spot after all that. It's cool your boss helped you find a job too. And ending up in a much better relationship is a win. Sometimes taking that leap is all you need.
I left my home like this. One night, I just packed the essentials into my backpack, walked to a train station, and got on a train to Newport News, Virginia from Pasco, Washington. No one knew I was gone until 3 o'clock the next morning. It was to be with a girl my family was totally 100% against. That was a year ago. It's all working perfectly. I am happier now than I ever have been before.
Sometimes you need to take a leap. Just like that, I left everything behind. I thought it was risky at the time, sneaking out like that, but it felt necessary. The family wasn't thrilled about my choice, but I had to follow my heart. A year later, I look back and realize it was worth it. I'm genuinely happy with where I am now. Sometimes, you have to do what makes you feel alive.
My mother left me at her door. I would visit every Saturday for a few hours. Then she wasn't there. After 10+ years of extreme hate towards her, my uncle enlightened me. He said maybe she left you for the better. Turns out she has extreme mental issues. Drug abuse. It's amazing how few words can change your life.
It's tough dealing with family issues. I had a friend who faced something similar. His mom was distant too, always in and out of his life. He carried a lot of anger for years. Then one day, an old photo reminded him of the good times. He realized holding on to hate was only hurting him. Sometimes it's those small moments that shift our perspective. It's all about healing in the end.
I was 21, on my 3rd year of college, getting drunk and high on pills every single night, puking every single morning, fucking guy after random guy, had just had an abortion, 98 pounds and barely scraping by in my classes. One day I woke up and felt so unbelievably sick, tired of the way, and was living I considered ending my life. Instead of killing myself, I packed up as much as I could fit in my car while my housemates were in class/work and moved to North Carolina to live by the beach. I called my parents and told them what I was doing, which broke their hearts, which broke my heart. I still come home for some holidays. I stayed in a cheap, disgusting motel for 2 months before I saved enough at my waitress job to get an apartment 40 minutes from the beach. I'm currently married to a wonderful man, completely sober, finished my degree, and have a baby due in December. I can truly say I'm happy.
That sounds like a tough time. It's wild how quickly life can change. Moving to North Carolina was probably a big leap, but it seems like it turned out for the best. It's good to hear you found stability and happiness. Life can have its ups and downs, but it's cool to see someone come out stronger in the end. Congrats on the baby too. That's a big step forward.
Not really the same thing, and there's other drama involved, but to keep it short, went through a bad breakup. To get away from it, I went to Sri Lanka in 2004 during Christmas. The tsunami happened. Came back and told my family and about 2 friends I was leaving LA. Boarded a plane a few days later for New York with only 2 bags, no app, no job. Found a job and a flat within the first few weeks. I've been here 10 years now and have no regrets. Edit. She's married now and very happy. Took all of the plans we spoke about and applied them to her, then knew dude and did them with him. They live in the same area and XYZ. I'm happy for her regardless. She was a great person. We were just young.
It sounds like you took a big leap after that breakup. Moving across the country with nothing lined up is pretty brave. The tsunami added a heavy twist to your story, though. It's good to hear you found a job and a place so quickly. 10 years is a long time, and it seems like you found your way. It's nice that your friend is doing well too, shows things can work out.
I was sort of the left behind. A friend left for smokes and never came back, leaving her 4-year-old with me. I wasn't ready to be a mom by any stretch of the imagination, but by the time we located the family and they said they didn't want the little guy, I couldn't imagine my life without him. It's been a struggle, but we are 10 years in, and he has changed my life in unimaginable ways. Her loss is all I think when I see his smiling face every day. I don't know where she is. I never heard from her again, other than when she dropped some of his clothes off through a mutual friend. I'm glad she had never come back, because I don't know what I would do. I think it would break my heart if he wanted to be with her.
That's a pretty wild situation to be in. You just expect to hang out, and suddenly you're responsible for a kid. It's crazy how life turns out sometimes. You end up caring for someone in ways you didn't think were possible. That bond must be strong after all these years. It's tough thinking about what could have been, especially with the friend who left. But it sounds like you've made it work.
I'm from New Zealand. Moved to Melbourne, Australia to be with a girl. She ended up being batshit crazy. I was basically a prisoner for 2 years. I managed to scrape together enough money for a ticket home. I told her I was just going home for a visit on my mom's birthday. Bought a return flight and left most of my stuff there. If I didn't do the sneaky, she would have hidden/destroyed my passport, ATM card, and shit like that. It was the best thing I have ever done.
That sounds rough. It's wild how someone can seem one way at first, and then turn out completely different. Glad you found a way to escape that situation. It's important to look out for yourself, especially when things get dangerous. Returning home must have felt like a huge relief. Sometimes you need to do what's best for you, even if it means keeping things a secret.
Not first-hand experience, but this happened to my mom when she was like 14, 45 years ago. Her uncle went out for a pack of smokes when she was 14, and they never saw him again. It was like an urban legend in our family, until my grandfather, his brother, found him 40 years later. He's now living in the US, we're from Canada, and has had a completely new family. They didn't know about us and we didn't know about them. Refuses to come back to Canada. We don't think he's allowed back. And doesn't want to talk about any of the circumstances on why he left. Uneasy face. We're still trying to adjust to it, but it's still really weird.
That's a strange story. I can't imagine what it's like for your mom to have that kind of family mystery hanging over her. It's wild how someone can just disappear and start a whole new life. The unknown must feel unsettling. I guess it leaves a lot of questions that might never get answered. It's probably tough for everyone involved to deal with those feelings. Just one of those things that happens, I guess.
My dad went to pay the rent when I was 2 years old, and Mom was 7 months pregnant with my brother. Never heard from him again. Don't know where he went or what he did, but I've since found out he had another daughter that he abandoned before I was born, and a couple more after he left us. It affected Mom far more than she has ever let on, but as far as I'm concerned, it was his loss, not ours.
It's tough when someone you should be able to count on just disappears. Sounds like your dad chose a path that affected a lot of people. It takes a lot to look past that and see it as his loss instead of yours. Your mom must have been really strong dealing with all that. In the end, you're better off without someone who didn't want to be there.
I kind of did this. Woke up knowing how much of a mistake going to art school in San Francisco was. Called a friend who came to the city later that day and helped me pack my shit and left. I moved in with a different friend, got a job the next day, and went from there. I told my roommate when they called a few days later I was in school housing, so I didn't dick them over, and a friend from work the day I left when she called wanted to get some dinner. Never regretted it, because eventually it led to my spouse and kids. Edit, no, guys, this is not from him. I'm realizing I should have sued the shit out of the writers for stealing my story, though.
That's a pretty bold move. Just waking up and deciding to leave art school like that shows you knew what you wanted. It's cool your friend helped you out right away. Sometimes, a sudden change can really lead to good things, and it sounds like it worked out for you. Finding a job instantly and then building a life with someone you love is definitely a win.
Left my family after I turned 18. Unenrolled myself from school, got a plane ticket and packed right in front of my mom and her husband without a question. We lived with other family, so having things in a suitcase wasn't too odd. I told one of my siblings, had a friend drive me to the airport when I left in the morning for school. They didn't know I was gone until I didn't come home from school. Flew 2,000 miles back to where I lived before to be with my girlfriend and finish school with my friends. Got out of an abusive house and out on my own. I would say it worked out as I have been with my girlfriend, now wife, for almost 8 years, and we are having our 3rd child this August. Life is better away from my family.
That sounds like a major turning point. Leaving home at 18 is a big deal, especially when it involves cutting ties with family. It takes a lot of courage to prioritize your own well-being. Seems like you made the right choice moving back for your girlfriend and friends. 8 years later, with a growing family, it looks like you found a better path for yourself. Life can definitely improve when you're in a healthier environment.
I was about a month out of high school. I whinnied to the recruiting office and joined the Navy. I knew I wasn't college material, but still wanted to do something. So I didn't just leave in the night, but gave everyone a month's notice that I'm going to be gone for the next 6 years. GF broke up with me 3 months into my new career, but I managed to survive. After the first year, my relationship with my parents improved because I was doing something on my own and they were proud. I recently got out after my 6 years with a whirlwind of mental problems that crept up on me, and they have been there to help me out like no other.
Sounds like a big change from high school to the Navy. It's rough when relationships don't last, especially with a lot going on. Good to hear your parents came around though. It's tough dealing with mental health after everything. Having support is important. Glad they're there for you now. Life can be a mix of ups and downs, but you seem to be handling it.
I was 14, and my dad was absent and had essentially left me with an increasingly abusive stepmother. One day, I walked out of the door on my way to school, and the realization hit me that I wasn't going to do this anymore. I went to the school counselor, told her what was going on in my life, and the police escorted me home to grab some things, and then onto a teen shelter. I was there for a while, then I stayed with my grandmother who was local, and then I moved to California to meet my mother who had split up with my dad when I was a baby. I lived with her and my newfound half-siblings for about a year, and then moved out on my own. It's been 14 years since I left home. I have a really gentle, patient husband who makes me laugh, and a toddler daughter. I also have 2 graduate degrees and a job I work really hard at and am proud of, where I help people every day.
It sounds like you've been through a lot. Leaving an abusive situation at such a young age took a lot of courage. It's cool to see how things turned out for you afterward. Building a life with your husband and daughter while achieving your education is inspiring. It shows that even tough beginnings can lead to something positive. Glad you found a path that works for you.
I know of 3, all with some serious mental illness. First one left family, was an Army vet, went down in a plane crash or something in the military, ex-alcoholic, was gone for almost 9 years before they found some trace of him in a halfway house. Second guy had mental illness, heavy drug and alcohol illness. Parents sent him to the Navy. One day he was gone, no word. 45 days later he re-appeared. Spent time in Navy jail. Not sure how it works, for drug use, dishonorably discharged. Last guy I knew was in school. Everything seemingly fine, then gone for 2 years. Comes back, said he was in witness protection. Turns out he was in jail for almost killing somebody.
It's wild how life can turn out for some people. I had a friend who went through a lot. One day he just disappeared, and we found out later he was in a halfway house after battling his demons. Another friend joined the Navy but ended up in trouble and away from everyone for a while. It makes you think about how quickly everything can change.
It's not quite the same, but I remember the last time I saw my dad. He had always let me down and lied to me, and eventually my mom and stepdad had enough. I stayed around my dad's every other weekend, so I had some stuff there. One day, my mom and stepdad went to my dad's and picked up all my stuff. My dad's GF would only let me through due to the aggressive history between my stepdad and my dad. My dad didn't even get out of bed but was wide awake. I went upstairs and went past his bedroom. His door was ajar, and he just said, "Hi DJ," my nickname. I grabbed my stuff and went downstairs. He didn't say a word, neither did I. Haven't spoke to him since, and that was 7 years ago. Excuse any errors. It's 4 a.m.
That sounds like a tough experience. It's not easy dealing with family issues, especially when there's a lot of hurt involved. It's interesting how some relationships can just fade away over time. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of being let down by a parent and the impact it has on your life. Sometimes it's just easier to move on and focus on the people who are there for you.
Sure, this will get buried. It's been about 32 years. Had a rough house growing up, mentally ill, abusive father, horrible stepmothers, etc. One day I come home from school when I was 14 years old, and my dad had left a note stating he was leaving and was killing himself. I looked at my stepmom and said, "I went and packed a backpack and left." I spent nights at friends' houses / under bridges and trees, but stayed in school. Eventually, a family from my church took me in after a few months of the nomadic life. I lived with them until I graduated from high school. Went to college, found a wonderful wife. Went to medical school, and now I'm a doctor with a wonderful family. I work too hard, but am very blessed. Just wanted to put this out there for anyone young in a difficult situation. You can become anything you wanna, it just takes determination and hard work. Get out of the bad situation if you can at all. Being homeless was scary, but peaceful for me. I was lucky in that I had friends that helped me. Edit, grammar, he didn't kill himself, but was gone almost 3 months.
Life can throw some tough challenges your way. Growing up in a rough environment makes things complicated. It's impressive how you managed to keep going despite everything. Those nights spent under bridges or at friends' houses must have been tough, but it sounds like you had some support along the way. Finding that family from church and turning your life around shows a lot of resilience. Now being a doctor and having a family is a great achievement.
When I was 18, I left home because my mom gave me an ultimatum that either I break up with my boyfriend or I'm not going to college because she's not paying for it. She's always been very emotionally manipulative during my childhood. I said, fuck that, I want both. So I left with my boyfriend, moved across country, enrolled in university, and paid for it via scholarships, grants, and student loans. I didn't talk to my family during the first year in college. My boyfriend convinced me at least to write them letters, so I did. And it took more convincing from my boyfriend for me to talk to my family when I went back to my hometown for summer break. I found out that during the year I was gone, rumors were floating around my extended family that I had eloped and gotten pregnant, etc. Now 10 years later, I'm a professional structural engineer with 2 college degrees, making more money than I thought I would be at 28, married to said boyfriend, and have an amicable relationship with my family. Still not pregnant yet though, haha.
That's quite a journey. Leaving home at 18 must have been tough, especially with all the pressure. It's interesting how your boyfriend played a role in keeping those connections alive even when you needed space. The rumors were probably frustrating, but it's cool to see how you've turned things around. Now you're doing well in your career and have built a life with him. Sounds like you found your own path.
My uncle actually did this. I don't know the full story, but what I recall is my mom and her siblings were in an abusing household. They made a plan for my uncle to be picked up by a friend and taken away. And one day when he was 13, this happened. I think he stayed with them for a while, before moving out at around 15 to 17. He got into a trade, carpentry, and has recently built himself a cabin. However, according to my mother, he doesn't remember anything from before he was 17. So yeah.
That's an interesting story. Your uncle seems to have gone through a lot at a young age. It's kind of remarkable how he managed to turn things around, becoming a carpenter and building a cabin for himself. It's a bit strange too, not remembering anything before 17. I guess some experiences just stay buried. Life really does take unexpected turns sometimes.
I had a successful business, fleet vehicles, retail store with my abusive, jealous ex. I started the business alone, yet added her to the business to give her assurance. I added her to the business accounts. You know where this leads. Well, she dug in deep and started not only withdrawing, but making deliveries, emptying the cash register, collecting on invoices, and simply keeping all the dollar. Well, I finally had it. I grabbed my keys, some pictures, and left. The store was still fully stocked. The cars were parked outside. I notified property manager I will not be extending my lease, and I never looked back. I had zero money, broken down car, and in my 40s. I sold all my possessions and started from there. I worked my tail to the bone. Today, brand new corporation, new retail store, new car, 3 businesses, and best of all, just moved in with the sweetest, most caring woman I've ever met.
That's quite a journey. It's interesting how some experiences can push you to rebuild from scratch. After everything you went through, starting over must have felt both daunting and liberating. It's good to hear you found a supportive partner now. That change in your life seems to have brought you some stability and happiness. Sometimes, hitting rock bottom leads to the best comebacks.
Mother left me at a babysitter's house when I was 2. My father was a Marine and was overseas in Okinawa at the time. He flew my grandmother from Iowa to California to retrieve me while he waited to return to the USA. Once he returned, we went back to base housing in California. My grandmother came along and helped raise me until I was 14. My dad retired then and came back to Iowa. I never saw my mother again until I was 25. We forged a relationship and bonded greatly. She tried very hard to redeem herself. I forgave her and she died 5 years later. I was so grateful for those 5 years with her. She was mentally ill and I hold nothing against her now.
Life can throw you some curveballs. Being left with a babysitter at 2 isn't an easy start. Your dad had a tough job, and it sounds like your grandma stepped in when it mattered. It must have been strange meeting your mom at 25 after so long. It's good you found some peace before she passed. Those years with her seem to have meant a lot to you. Forgiveness is a heavy but important thing to carry.
2 years ago, my girlfriend and I just packed up and moved 2 states over. We were having a pretty rough time living with my parents, so after a huge argument, we just loaded up our small car with anything that would fit and went camping for a month while I looked for a job and an apartment. So 2 years later, we'll be getting married soon, and I've just taken a new job with a 6-figure salary. That camping trip was probably the happiest I've ever been. Nowhere to go, no responsibilities. It was freedom.
That sounds like a big turning point. Just leaving everything behind and going for it must have felt liberating. Camping for a month seems like a unique way to start fresh. It's cool that it led to something so positive, like a new job and getting married. The way you describe that time as freedom really makes it relatable. Sometimes, stepping away can show you what really matters.
I left my kids with my husband after quitting my job. He was sapping me of everything I could ever have emotionally and was neglectful to me as a wife. It was either leave or kill myself. I am now going through a divorce and I am getting my life together. My kids and I have a better relationship than ever because I am emotionally fit to care for them. I am now the mother they deserve.
It's good to hear you made a choice for your well-being. Sometimes stepping away is what you need to find yourself and be a better parent. Going through a tough time, like a divorce, can be rough, but it sounds like it's putting you on a better path. Connecting with your kids more now is a solid step forward. Glad you're feeling more emotionally fit and present for them.
I just couldn't take it anymore. Lived in a small suburb of a major city where everyone was always in everybody else's business. Wife cheated on me and got pregnant doing so. My parents both died in a car crash. And I sustained a very bad injury at work which left me permanently disabled. Had to get out, so I did. One night while the wife was sleeping, I jumped in the car and drove across states. 2 years ago. Now I own a rather large farm on the opposite side of the country, as well as my own consulting business. Legally, I had my name changed in order to put the past behind me. Haven't spoken to the ex-wife since. Couldn't be happier. Edit. Been getting a lot of PMs over this post. Will AMA if interested.
It sounds like you had a tough time back there. Dealing with so much loss and betrayal must have been heavy. It's interesting how you turned it around by moving and starting fresh. Running a farm and a consulting business seems like a big shift. It's good to hear you found happiness away from that situation. Changing your name to start anew makes sense too. Sometimes a clean break is exactly what you need.
As someone with depression and anxiety, I can honestly tell you that you treating him like a human being and not a freak, while still showing him that you care, would have made a lot of difference in how he felt on that day. I bet he still thinks about it. Did you get any backlash from the rest of your family for doing that?
I haven't really faced backlash from my family when I helped a friend through tough times. They mostly understand that mental health is important. It can be tough, but showing care can really mean a lot to someone struggling. I've seen how simple kindness can change someone's day. It's those small moments that stick with people. Makes you realize the power of just being there for someone.
Similar start, even my story ended different. My dad was abusive when my brother and me were kids, even though he worked on it. Super controlling as well. When I turned 18 and had a girlfriend, he would still control when I go where and when to be back, etc., etc. We kept colliding more and more until one day he tried to slap me, again like back when I was smaller. He told me to leave, then tried to stop me from doing so. I spat on his feet and left. Long story short, our relationship is now quite okay, and I come for a visit from time to time. Gonna do my bachelor's end of the year. Side note, after all of that stuff, he would blame me for having money problems, which he hadn't. how hard everything was because I wouldn't do my share in the house anymore, and when he gave away our dogs for no good reason, he blamed me as well. That confirmed me in my decision more and more.
It's tough to hear stories like this. It's good to see that you found a way to break free from that situation. Sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to change things. It's interesting how relationships can shift over time. Now you visit your dad despite everything. Focusing on your studies and your own path seems like a solid plan. Good luck with your bachelor's.
I've been there, man. Physically violent, lazy, her way or nothing kind of thing. Was living with her about 900 miles away from home. Only gave her like 5 hours of notice that I was leaving. She cried about it, I didn't care, and I bounced. 5 years later, today, she's on medications for mental illnesses, married, has a kid, is working hard to get a nice degree and job, and we actually chat pretty often and get along well. I've always thought it's important to be willing to forgive people.
It's interesting how time can change things. You had a rough relationship, but it sounds like both of you have grown since then. Her journey with mental health and success is a reminder that people can improve. Staying in touch, despite the past, shows a lot about forgiveness. Life keeps moving, and it's good to see how people can turn things around in their own ways.
Always drove. Stayed in monthly motels in the best area I could find, sometimes, surprisingly, a chain hotel like Holiday Inn. Got job, got second job, got apartment, furniture at Goodwill, got better apartment. When I think now about how often I did this with so little money, I shudder. But perhaps things were different in the 70s and 80s. I don't know if it is the same now.
That sounds like quite a journey. Just moving around, hustling for jobs, making it work with what you had. It's interesting how things change over time. I wonder if people today would manage the same way or if it's tougher now. Adapting to that kind of lifestyle takes a lot of grit.
Real talk, it's hard. I packed a bag, jumped on a train, and moved from North Carolina down to Louisiana with absolutely zero plan. But with the help of Reddit, funnily enough. I had enough money saved up to get a car, but that was it. I slept in that car for a few weeks before meeting up with a friend that gave me a place to crash. Still, anything was better than having to be where I was. The main thing that is needed is desperation, knowing that it could be worse. That's the real way to get by the first few nights. I was sleeping in a shitty car, way too hot, no food, and hadn't bathed in days with a broken foot, and sure I cried, but it was out of joy. Because at least I wasn't where I came from. At least I was free.
This story hits close to home. I had a friend who did something similar. He packed up and left his small town for the same reason: he needed change. He faced tough nights too, crashing at friends' places and figuring things out on the go. It wasn't easy, but just like in your story, the freedom made it all worth it for him. Sometimes, desperation pushes you to find what really matters.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.